All right, let's dive in. Ready for today's deep dive?
Always.
We're taking a look at this article called "A Woman Who is Deeply Attracted to You is Always Doing This in Front of You."
Hmm.
I gotta say, that title, always, a little bit bold, don't you think?
Yeah, maybe a bit of a stretch.
But hey, definitely caught my eye, no pun intended. But seriously, are there really these foolproof signs that someone's into you? What do you think?
Well, this article seems to think so.
Oh, yeah.
It lays out all these behaviors that it claims are totally undeniable signs of attraction.
Like what? Give me the goods.
Well, for one, prolonged eye contact.
Eye contact. Classic.
Right. Have you ever felt that intensity when it's like someone's just staring right through you?
Oh, yeah.
Makes you wonder what they're thinking. Right?
Definitely. It can be a little, I don't know, unnerving.
Yeah.
But also kind of exciting. Is this just friendly eye contact? Or is there something more there?
Yeah.
I mean, this article is claiming that extended eye contact, that's a surefire sign of deep attraction.
It is true that couples who say they feel really connected do tend to look at each other for longer, even when they're just talking about everyday things.
Oh, interesting.
So it might not just be about that initial spark. It could be, a way to strengthen that bond between them. But you can't just say, oh, she looked at me for 5 seconds. She must be head over heels.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people are just more comfortable with eye contact than others, you know what I mean?
Totally.
I've definitely been in situations where I felt like I was practically staring someone down without even meaning to.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with attraction.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
More to do with the triple espresso I had that morning.
Oh, for sure. And plus, you have to consider cultural norms too, right?
Yeah.
What's considered normal eye contact in one culture might be seen as too intense or even rude in another.
Oh, that's a good point.
And then you have personality types too.
Right.
Some people are just naturally expressive with their eyes, while others might be more shy or anxious, especially in social situations.
So someone who avoids eye contact, they might not be dismissive.
Right.
They might just be a little nervous.
Could be.
Okay, that makes sense. So maybe eye contact is more like a subtle hint
Yeah.
than a giant flashing neon sign.
Exactly. It's just one piece of the puzzle,
Yeah.
You got to look at the whole picture.
Right. Okay, so speaking of looking at the whole picture, what about body language? I mean, the article talks about open and engaged posture as a dead giveaway of attraction. Leaning in, uncrossed arms, mirroring your movements.
Yeah, the mirroring thing is interesting.
It is.
There's some really cool research on that.
Oh, tell me more.
It suggests that when we're drawn to someone, we sometimes unconsciously copy their posture and their movements.
Wow.
It's
Yeah.
almost like our bodies are trying to say, hey, we're on the same page here. But again, context is key. Open body language, it could definitely signal comfort and interest.
Yeah, for sure.
But that interest could be friendly or professional
Oh, right.
or, romantic.
Gotcha. So it's kind of don't mistake kindness for anything more than kindness. Don't
Yeah.
overanalyze every little lean or every time someone uncrosses their arms.
Right. Think about it. If you're having a great conversation with a coworker about a project you both really care about,
Yeah.
you're probably leaning in, making eye contact,
Wow.
maybe even mirroring their gestures without realizing it.
True.
But it's because you're engaged in the conversation, not because you're secretly harboring romantic feelings for your colleague.
Okay, yeah, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here. It's about the whole situation, not just picking and choosing the behaviors that fit the story we want to tell ourselves.
Exactly.
Which brings us to laughter.
Mm.
This article claims that if a woman laughs easily around you, especially at your jokes, even the bad ones,
Oh, no.
it's a sign of deep attraction. What do you think? Is laughter the sound of love blooming?
Well, laughter definitely is a powerful way to connect with people, that's for sure.
It is.
When we find someone funny, it usually means we feel comfortable around them and we enjoy their company.
Makes sense.
There's also this cool thing called emotional contagion.
What's that?
Basically, when you hear someone laughing, you might start laughing too, even if the joke wasn't that funny.
Yeah.
Our emotions kind of rub off on each other.
Oh, that's interesting. So I could be laughing just because someone else is laughing, not necessarily because I think they're hilarious.
Could be.
Okay, that's good to know because sometimes I laugh at jokes I don't even get just because everyone else is cracking up.
It happens. It's a very social thing. We want to be in sync with the people around us.
Right. So laughter can definitely be a sign of connection,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not always a guaranteed sign of romantic interest.
Right. Could be friendship.
Okay, so far, we've got eye contact and laughter, both potentially misleading on their own. But what about those subtle touches? You know, like a brush of the hands or a playful tap on the shoulder. Is that a direct line to someone's heart? Or could it be something else entirely?
Ah, now that is where things get a little more tricky because physical touch, it's so personal.
It is.
And it can be influenced a lot by culture.
That's right.
What one person thinks is playful and harmless might feel, intrusive or unwelcome to someone else.
Yeah.
So consent, respect for personal boundaries, super important here.
Huge. We can't just assume that what we're comfortable with is okay for everyone else.
Exactly.
And even if the touch is welcome, you have to pay attention to how often it happens.
Right.
And the context. Right.
Exactly. A quick touch on the arm during a conversation, it might not mean much.
Yeah.
But repeated or lingering touches, that could suggest a stronger level of interest.
Okay. So, one touch, maybe nothing. 2 touches, pay attention. 3 touches, call a lawyer.
Haha, well, maybe not that drastic. But yeah, you're right. It's about looking for those patterns and thinking about the whole context.
Patterns, not just isolated incidents.
Yeah.
Got it. So, moving on, this article also brings up genuine curiosity as a sign of attraction. Like, if a woman goes beyond small talk and asks deeper questions about your life, your passions, your dreams,
Yeah.
that's supposed to be a sign she's really into you.
It's interesting, right? Because on one hand, who doesn't love diving into those deeper conversations?
I know, right? It's how you really get to know someone.
It is. But couldn't that just be genuine interest in connecting with another human being?
Yeah.
Whether it's romantic or not.
Right, exactly. Like, my best friend, she's amazing at that.
Oh, yeah.
She always asks thoughtful questions and listens so intently. I feel so heard and understood when I talk to her.
Sounds like a great friend.
She is. And while I love her to pieces, it's definitely a platonic love.
Exactly. So, those deeper questions,
Uh-huh.
they could mean romantic interest. But they could also just be the start of a fantastic friendship or any other kind of meaningful connection, really.
Okay. I'm noticing a theme here. These undeniable signs are looking more and more like subtle hints.
Yeah.
And we need to be careful about jumping to conclusions. It's all about interpretation.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not about finding one single clue. It's more like
Yeah.
gathering evidence and looking at all the different explanations before you decide what it all means.
Okay, I like that. It's like being a detective, but for relationships.
How?
Now, speaking of potential misinterpretation,
Oh, yeah.
we talked about how nervous energy can sometimes be mistaken for attraction. How can we avoid falling into that trap?
Well, first of all, remember that nervousness can come from a lot of different places, right?
Sure.
It doesn't have to be attraction.
All right.
Someone might be fidgety because they're uncomfortable in the environment or self-conscious about something they said.
Right.
Or maybe they're just having a bad day.
So someone who keeps, adjusting their hair, they might just have a static cling problem.
Exactly. Or they might be stressed about a deadline at work or worried about something in their personal life.
Right. It's so easy to overthink things and make it all about us.
It is. And this is where empathy can be really helpful.
Oh, how so?
Instead of immediately deciding what someone's behavior means, try to put yourself in their shoes. What might be going on for them? Are there other things that could be affecting how they're acting?
That's a great point. We all have our own stuff going on, our own experiences, anxieties, insecurities.
Exactly. We can't assume that every little thing someone does is a direct reaction to us.
Okay, good reminder. So we've talked about how physical touch can be a potential sign of attraction,
Yeah.
but it's also super important to respect boundaries and get consent. How do we navigate that gray area?
It's a tricky one for sure.
It is. Because on one hand, a playful touch can be a really sweet way to flirt,
Definitely.
but it could also be misconstrued or make someone feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So how do we strike that balance?
Well, I think the key is to be aware of both your own comfort level and the other person's cues.
Okay.
If you're not sure if a certain type of touch is okay, it's always best to err on the side of caution.
Right. Better safe than sorry.
Exactly.
So maybe start with something subtle, like a brief touch on the arm during a conversation.
Could be a good starting point.
Yeah. And see how they respond. If they seem open and receptive, then maybe gradually escalate things.
Yeah, and if they flinch or pull away, that's a pretty clear sign to back off.
Right.
And don't be afraid to use your words. You can always just ask directly.
Oh, like, is it okay if I...
Yeah, like, is it okay if I touch your arm? Or is it okay if I give you a hug?
Right.
It might feel a little awkward at first, but it shows that you respect their boundaries and that you care about their comfort.
I love that. It's such a simple thing, but it can make a big difference.
It really can.
And honestly, asking permission in a playful way can actually be kind of flirty.
Oh, totally.
Like, would you be terribly offended if I brushed this stray eyelash off your cheek?
There you go.
Yeah.
It's all about finding that balance between being respectful and also showing that you're interested.
This is all so helpful.
Good, I'm glad.
I'm realizing that the most important thing when it comes to figuring out if someone is attracted to you, it's not about memorizing a bunch of behaviors.
No.
It's about, like, developing your emotional intelligence
Yes.
and being more aware of all the nuances of human interaction.
You got it. It's about paying attention, observing, listening,
Right.
empathizing,
Yeah.
and communicating openly and honestly. These are skills that will help you in all your relationships,
That's true.
not just romantic ones.
So we've talked about a bunch of different potential signs of attraction, but it seems like none of them are foolproof.
It's true.
It's all about context
Definitely.
and individual differences and paying attention to patterns over time.
Exactly.
This has been so enlightening. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to go back to something we touched on earlier. The fear of rejection.
Yes.
It's something that holds so many people back from putting themselves out there.
It's true. It can be really scary.
It is. So do you have any advice for our listeners who might be struggling with that fear?
That's a great question, and one that deserves its own deep dive, honestly.
Maybe we'll have to do a follow-up episode on that. But
Yeah.
for now, any quick tips?
Sure. I would say this. Rejection. It's universal.
What do you mean?
Everyone experiences it at some point.
Oh,
No matter how attractive they are or how successful or how charming.
so I'm not alone in feeling this way.
Not at all.
Okay, that's actually kind of comforting to know.
Good.
But even knowing that, it doesn't necessarily make it any less scary.
I get it.
Do you have any tips for, like, managing those feelings of vulnerability and the potential for heartbreak?
One thing that might help is to remember that rejection usually says more about the other person than it does about you.
Oh, interesting.
They might not be available,
Uh-huh.
or they might have different priorities.
Right.
Or maybe they're just not looking for the same kind of connection that you are.
So their no doesn't automatically mean there's something wrong with me.
Right. It might just be a matter of timing or compatibility or any number of things.
Things that have nothing to do with, like, my worthiness as a person.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that.
And the more we can see rejection as a redirection,
A redirection.
yeah, like instead of a failure, the less power it will have over us.
I love that reframe. Rejection is a redirection.
Right. It's like the universe saying, okay, that wasn't the right path for you, but here's a different one that might lead you to something even better.
Beautifully said. And I guess every time we put ourselves out there, even if it ends in rejection, we're building our courage muscles.
You are. It's like a workout for your heart.
A workout for our hearts. I love that. The more we practice vulnerability and resilience, the stronger and more confident we become.
Exactly.
Especially when it comes to navigating the ups and downs of relationships. Okay, so we've talked about rejection, but what about the flip side? Like, how do we attract the right people in the first place? I know we've touched on authenticity a bit already,
Yes.
but I want to dive deeper into that.
Yeah.
Because it can be so easy to get caught up in trying to be the perfect version of ourselves.
Oh, yeah. The version we think other people will like.
Exactly.
But that's exhausting.
It is.
And you can't keep it up forever. Plus, it's not fair to yourself or the other person to pretend to be someone you're not.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Authenticity is about embracing all parts of ourselves. The good, the bad, the messy.
All of it. It's about being comfortable in your own skin
Uh-huh.
and just showing up in the world as your most genuine self.
That sounds great in theory, but it can be so scary to be vulnerable. To let people see our imperfections.
I know.
Well, what if they don't like what they see?
Well, here's the thing. The right people will.
Oh.
The people who are truly meant for you will love you for who you really are.
Hmm.
Your quirks, your flaws, all of it.
You really think so?
I do. They might even find those imperfections endearing.
Wow. Okay. That's reassuring. It's like, come as you are, baggage and all.
Haha, exactly. The people who are meant to be in your life will help you unpack.
I love that. So The right people will see our vulnerability as a strength, not a weakness.
Exactly.
Okay, so authenticity is key.
Mm.
But how do we actually cultivate that authenticity? Is there a special diet for that?
I wish.
A workout routine? Spill the secrets.
If only it were that simple. But there are definitely things you can do, like spending time thinking about your values, your beliefs, your passions,
No, okay.
the things that really matter to you, the things that make you feel alive and excited about life.
That's a good point. It's so easy to lose sight of that stuff when we're caught up in what other people think we should be doing.
It happens to the best of us.
So once we have a better understanding of our own internal compass, then what?
Then you can start making choices that are more aligned with who you truly are.
Okay.
That might mean saying no to things that drain your energy,
Yeah.
even if there are things that society tells you should be doing. Or it might mean pursuing passions that light you up, even if they're not considered cool or successful by other people.
I like that. Giving ourselves permission to be who we really are.
Exactly.
Even if it's messy or imperfect or unconventional.
And when you're living in alignment with your authentic self, you naturally radiate this confidence, this magnetism.
Oh, really?
And that's what attracts the right people to you.
So it's like, forget trying to fit into someone else's mold.
Yeah. Embrace your own unique shape and find the people who appreciate your curves.
I love that. It's about celebrating our individuality and trusting that the right people will find us irresistible just the way we are.
You got it. This has been such an inspiring conversation. I feel like I'm walking away with a whole new perspective on everything. Attraction, relationships, myself.
Me too. It's been amazing.
I'm so glad. And remember, this is a journey of self-discovery. You're always learning more about yourself.
Right.
And about how we connect with each other.
Okay. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on one more thing about authenticity. Being honest with ourselves about what we're looking for in a partner.
That's crucial.
It is. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of a potential connection.
Oh, yeah.
But if our values don't align, or our life goals are completely different.
It's not likely to work out in the long run.
Right.
Heartbreak waiting to happen, probably.
So how do we avoid that?
Well, you have to be self-aware.
Okay.
And you have to be willing to communicate.
Communicate what?
What you truly want and need in a partner.
And how do we figure that out?
Well, that's a whole other deep dive. But once you know what you're looking for,
Yeah.
then you can communicate those needs clearly and respectfully.
Okay, I like that. It's like having a relationship GPS.
What do you mean?
Like you got to know your destination before you can start navigating.
Oh, I like that. And just like with a GPS, there might be detours.
Right, right.
Unexpected turns along the way.
For sure. Life is unpredictable. But as long as you stay true to your course and you communicate openly with your co-pilot, you'll eventually reach your destination.
You will. This has been an amazing conversation. We've covered so much ground already.
We have, from decoding subtle behaviors to embracing our authentic selves.
So much good stuff. But I know our listeners are eager to hear your final thoughts.
They are.
Your big takeaways on all of this.
I'm excited to share. But let's save that for the grand finale.
Sounds good.
We'll wrap up our closing remarks after a quick break. Okay, we're back, ready to keep unpacking all this attraction stuff.
Let's do it.
Before the break, we were talking about how easy it is to misinterpret someone's behavior,
Oh, yeah. It's like you see someone fidgeting with their sleeve and suddenly you're convinced they're head over heels for you.
Exactly. But we've been talking about how focusing on these isolated incidents, it can really lead us down the wrong path.
It's like trying to diagnose a medical condition based on just one symptom. You got to look at the whole picture, right? Consider all the possibilities, gather more information before you jump to conclusions.
Okay, so patterns, not just isolated incidents. Got it. But how do we know which patterns to look for? Is there some secret formula for decoding human behavior?
If only. Unfortunately, there's no magic decoder ring for this stuff. But one helpful strategy is to compare how someone interacts with you versus how they interact with other people.
Ah, so like a control group.
Exactly. Is there a noticeable difference in their behavior?
So if they're super animated and engaged when they talk to you, but then they're kind of quiet and reserved around other people, that might be a sign of something more than just friendly chit-chat.
Could be. And it's not just about comparing them to others, it's also about paying attention to changes in their behavior over time. Do they seem more relaxed and comfortable around you now than they did when you first met?
Interesting.
Do they initiate conversations more often? These subtle shifts can tell you a lot.
Okay, so it's like we're playing detective, gathering clues and trying to piece together the evidence.
I like that analogy.
But even the best detective can misinterpret a clue, right? We talked about how nervous energy can sometimes be mistaken for attraction. How can we avoid that trap?
Well, remember that nervousness can come from all sorts of places, right? It doesn't have to be attraction.
True, true.
Maybe they're uncomfortable with the environment or self-conscious about something they said, or maybe they're just having a bad day.
So someone who's constantly adjusting their hair might just have a static cling problem, not necessarily a secret crush on me.
Exactly. It's so easy to over-personalize these things.
Oh, really is.
This is where empathy comes in. Instead of assuming their behavior is all about you, try to see things from their perspective.
Okay, so put ourselves in their shoes.
Exactly. What might be going on for them? Are there other things that could be influencing their actions?
That's a good reminder. We all have our own unique set of experiences and anxieties.
Exactly. And speaking of things we need to be mindful of, let's talk about physical touch again. It can be a potential sign of attraction, but consent and respecting boundaries are absolutely essential.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Because a playful touch can be a really sweet way to flirt, but it can also easily be misinterpreted or make someone feel uncomfortable. How do we find that balance?
I think the key is to pay attention to both your own comfort level and the cues you're getting from the other person. If you're unsure if a certain type of touch is okay, err on the side of caution.
Right. Better to be safe than sorry.
Exactly. Start with something subtle, like a quick touch on the arm, and see how they respond. If they seem open to it, then maybe you can gradually escalate things. But if they flinch or pull away, that's a clear signal to back off.
Back off, got it.
And don't be afraid to use your words. You can always just ask directly, is it okay if I...
Like, is it okay if I touch your arm? Or give you a hug?
Exactly. It might feel a little awkward at first, but it shows respect for their boundaries.
I love that. It's such a simple thing, but it can really make a difference in terms of creating a culture of consent.
It really can. And honestly, sometimes asking permission can be a flirty move in itself.
Oh, totally. Like, would you be terribly offended if I brushed this stray eyelash off your cheek?
There you go. It's all about finding that sweet spot between showing respect and also expressing your interest.
This is so helpful. I'm starting to see that figuring out attraction isn't about memorizing a list of behaviors. It's about developing our emotional intelligence and paying attention to the nuances of human interaction.
Absolutely. It's about being present, being observant, and really tuning in to what's going on in the moment.
This has been so insightful. But before we move on to our final thoughts, I want to circle back to something we talked about earlier. The fear of rejection.
Ah, yes. The big R.
It holds so many people back, you know?
It does. It's totally understandable. Putting yourself out there is scary.
It is. So do you have any advice for our listeners who might be struggling with that fear?
Well, one thing to remember is that rejection is often more about the other person than it is about you.
What do you mean?
Well, they might be unavailable or have different priorities, or they might just not be looking for the same kind of connection that you are.
So their no doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with me.
Right. It's not a reflection of your worth as a person.
Okay, that makes me feel a little better.
Good. And the more we can view rejection as a redirection rather than a personal failure, the less power it will have over us.
I love that. Rejection as a redirection. It's like the universe saying, okay, that path wasn't meant for you, but here's a different one that might lead you to something even better.
Exactly. And remember, every time you put yourself out there, even if it ends in rejection, you're building your courage and resilience.
So it's like a workout for our hearts, like you said earlier. The more we practice, the stronger we get.
Exactly. So we've talked about rejection, but what about the flip side? How do we attract the right people? We've touched on authenticity.
Yes, let's dig into that a bit more. It's so easy to get caught up in trying to be this perfect version of ourselves.
Oh, I know. The version we think everyone else wants.
Right, but that's exhausting and honestly kind of pointless.
Totally. You can't keep up that facade forever. And it's not fair to you or the other person to pretend to be someone you're not.
Exactly. Authenticity, it's about owning all parts of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
The good, the bad, the messy.
A whole package.
And being comfortable in our own skin, right?
Right. Showing up as your genuine self.
I mean, it sounds great, but
Yeah. But
it can be pretty scary to be that vulnerable. You know,
Sure.
let people see our flaws and imperfections.
I get it. It's a risk. But the right people, They'll appreciate that vulnerability. They'll love you for who you truly are, quirks and all.
You really think so?
I do. They might even find those imperfections endearing.
Wow. Okay. That's actually really reassuring. It's like, come as you are, baggage and all.
Exactly. The people who are meant to be in your life, they'll help you unpack.
I love that. So, authenticity is key. But how do we actually cultivate that authenticity? What's the secret formula?
There's no magic formula, I'm afraid. But one thing that can really help is to spend some time reflecting. Think about your values, your beliefs, the things that are important to you.
Okay, so like figuring out our own internal compass.
Exactly. What makes you feel alive? What are you passionate about? Once you have a better understanding of those things, you can start making choices that are more in line with who you really are.
Choices like what?
Well, it might mean saying no to things that drain your energy, even if they're things that society tells you you should be doing. Or it could mean pursuing those passions that light you up, even if they're not the most conventional or successful pursuits.
I like that. Giving ourselves permission to be ourselves.
Exactly.
Even if it's messy or imperfect.
Exactly. And when you're living in alignment with your authentic self, you naturally radiate a certain confidence, a certain magnetism that draws people to you.
Really? It's that powerful?
It can be. It's about embracing your individuality and trusting that the right people will find you irresistible just the way you are.
I love that. So forget trying to fit into someone else's mold.
Yeah.
Find the people who appreciate your unique shape.
Find your people.
This has been so inspiring. I feel like I have a whole new perspective on attraction, relationships, and most importantly, myself.
That's amazing to hear. And remember, this is a journey.
A
journey of self-discovery. And there's always more to learn, more to explore.
Well said. But before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want to touch on one last piece of this authenticity puzzle. Being honest with ourselves about what we're looking for in a partner.
That's so important.
It is. Because it's easy to get swept up in the excitement of a new connection.
Oh yeah, it happens.
But if our values aren't aligned or our life goals are totally different,
It's probably not going to work out in the long run.
right. So how do we avoid setting ourselves up for heartbreak?
Self-awareness is key. And clear communication.
Okay, communication about what?
About what you truly want and need in a partner.
And how do we figure that out?
Well, that's a whole other deep dive. But once you have a sense of what you're looking for, then you can communicate those needs openly and respectfully to your potential partner.
I like that. It's like having a relationship GPS.
A relationship GPS? What do you mean?
Oh, you got to know your destination before you can start navigating, right?
Oh, that's a good one. And just like with a GPS, there might be some detours and unexpected turns along the way.
Right. That's life for you.
It is. But as long as you stay true to your course and you communicate openly with your co-pilot, you'll eventually reach your destination.
Okay, I love that analogy. So we've talked about decoding behaviors, embracing our authentic selves, facing rejection.
We have covered a lot of ground.
We have. I feel like I'm walking away with a whole toolbox of relationship wisdom.
I'm so glad.
But I know our listeners are eager to hear your final thoughts on this whole topic.
They are.
So let's wrap up this part of our deep dive.
Okay.
And we'll dive into our closing remarks right after this.
All right, welcome back. We're in the home stretch now.
Ready for the final takeaway?
I am. Bring it on. We've talked about eye contact, body language, laughter, touch.
So many potential clues.
So many potential for, like, misinterpretations, too. Right. We started by breaking down these so-called undeniable signs from that article. But we realized pretty quickly that there's no simple formula for figuring out if someone's attracted to you.
Exactly. Like, as much as we might want a foolproof guide to reading people's minds, it's just not that straightforward.
Nope. It's about looking at the whole picture, considering the context, and recognizing that everyone's different.
Right. Like what might be a sign of attraction for one person could mean something completely different for someone else.
Totally. But even more important than trying to decode everyone else's behavior is developing our own self-awareness.
Oh, that's good. So understanding our own feelings and motivations.
Exactly. Because ultimately, those are the questions that really matter. Do you feel a genuine connection with this person? Are you excited to spend time with them?
I like that. It's not just about trying to figure out if they like us, but also about whether we genuinely like them.
Precisely. And those questions can't be answered by some checklist of behaviors. It's about trusting your gut.
Our intuition.
Yep. Being honest with yourself about what you really want and need in a partner.
Which, I gotta say, can be tough sometimes.
It can be, especially in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about who we should be attracted to, how we should act, what we should want.
It's like all those external expectations can make it hard to hear our own inner voice.
Right. So it becomes a process of unlearning those societal expectations.
Unlearning.
And then relearning to trust your own inner compass.
Okay, so unlearning and relearning. What we should be doing and what we actually want to be doing. And it sounds like a big part of that is embracing our authentic selves, right?
Absolutely. Because that's what makes us truly magnetic and attractive.
So when we're comfortable in our own skin, when we own our quirks and imperfections,
That's when we shine.
and that's when we attract people who appreciate us for who we truly are.
Exactly. Those are the connections that have the potential to become something really special.
Whether it's a romantic relationship, a deep friendship, or any other kind of meaningful connection.
Right. So as we wrap up our deep dive today, I want to leave our listeners with this. Instead of getting caught up in trying to find those undeniable signs of attraction, focus your energy on cultivating genuine connections.
Connections built on shared values, mutual respect,
And of course, lots of laughter,
even if the jokes are bad.
especially if the jokes are bad. But seriously, this journey of self-discovery and connection, it's ongoing.
So true.
There's always more to learn, more to experience. So stay curious, stay open, and stay true to yourself.
Beautifully said. Huge thank you to our expert for taking us on this deep dive into attraction and human connection.
It's been a pleasure being here.
And to all our amazing listeners, thank you for joining us. We hope you've learned something new today and that you feel inspired to embrace your authentic selves and create those truly meaningful connections in your own lives. Until next time, keep exploring.
Take care.
And remember, the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself.